on the plane this morning. We started these things about 4 years ago, and we struggled to get around about 100 people in a room, and now there's 300 people here. So fantastic also to see so many customers of ours in the room. Thanks for coming. And what a start, Solfrid. Amazing. I understand 75% Norwegian, 95% Swedish, so Skavlan's great for me. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased I didn't go down the humorous route for my presentation, because I couldn't have beaten you. But actually, linked to your presentation, talking about emotion, it's great. When I was coming over on the plane, I was trying to find out more about some of the speakers today, because I don't know them. I'm having dinner with them tonight, so I didn't want to, drop any major faux pas. Is Christian here from Sparbanken, who's going to be... So talking about emotion... I was on your Twitter profile, and I just want to know, did you get your luggage back from Lufthansa the other week? After 3 days. You were pretty pissed off, right? Yeah, you were just the type of guy, it just reminded me so much of my rants on Twitter from customer service. So there you go. Okay, so my subject, it's not even on yet. PR is dead. So personally, I've worked in the PR arena for about 15 years now. And I'm going to talk about this, which comes actually from this guy. Has anyone actually read this new book from this guy called PR is Dead? Trust me, PR is dead. No? Okay. This guy used to head up Edelman in Europe, and his name is Robert Phillips, and he's just come out with this book a couple of months ago talking about how PR is dead. How many of us in this room work in PR and communications? Okay, right. So I'm going to take you through some of his arguments and also to look at what we actually think about this as well. But he's worked with Richard Edelman, and he starts his book talking about how PR is essentially a busted flush, and he uses these 5 threats. He says we suck at data and insights. That really, yes, data and insights are there, but the PR industry has failed to get to grips with it. He also says that even though we talk about outcomes, not outputs, in the Barcelona principles that were obviously adopted 5 years ago, none of us are any good at it, and we're still reporting far more outputs than outcomes. Networks, not hierarchies. We're all used to dealing with tier 1 media. We haven't really got a grip of the social scene. Some people have, but the PR industry in general sucks at it. Scale. He also believes that no big PR idea actually drives a business forward. It's not connected to business goals. And his first one is talent. He doesn't think we're bright enough. He thinks that the PR industry attracts pretty low-grade talent, actually. Strange for someone running one of the biggest PR firms. And even stranger that he was walking, he talks about walking in a university campus with Richard Edelman that heads up Edelman, and he said Richard Edelman completely agreed with him. And said, but, we've been doing this for years. We can't fundamentally change our business and our industry now. So it's a very, very good book. I don't agree with it, but I encourage you to download it so we can push our profession forward. But for my business, we're still in the trust business. The PR business will always be in the trust business. But for me, the trusted sources are changing. Of course, this comes from Edelman's own trust barometer, where for the first time this year, as I'm sure you all know, search engines actually surpassed traditional media as the most trusted source. My initial thought there was, what are search engine results full of? Traditional media search results. So I thought that was a bit strange. I think what's quite interesting now when you go down to the owned media, everyone's talking content marketing these days, and I'm sure that there'll be some presentations on that. I'm a big believer in it. We do a lot of that at Mynewsdesk too. But it's still not as trusted as traditional media. And so are the people. This is the second one from the Edelman Trust Barometer. The people that we trust online are changing as well. And the question for us, I think, is who actually tells our story best? So for me, the friends and family, the people like me, actually tell our story best. Of course, an academic expert has always been the way in PR if you can get one. I think what's really interesting is companies I use companies I news, the tremendous customer service opportunity we have if we can link our PR and communications efforts with those companies. And then a journalist comes below that. You know, how many of us primary audience still today is journalists? And then, of course, you know, we've all done campaigns and we've worked on programs where the CEO is a spokesman, or we have a well-known personality or a celebrity online. And who's doing most content marketing today? It's brands you don't use. They're trying to get your email address. They're trying to capture your data. They're trying to, you know, get after you. But you don't really trust them. We don't really trust them. But let's take a bit more of a positive spin on the PR industry, because when I read Robert's book, I was thinking, okay, fine, you make some interesting comments, but let's actually look at the PR industry. Globally, revenues, agency revenues, this comes from the Holmes report and the ICCO World Report that they come out every year. In the last 3 years, revenues have grown 25% in the PR industry. For me, that's not an industry that's in decline. Maybe that's some of the problem, because we can't actually change our business model and our practices because we are on a growth trajectory. 33% increase in PR employees over the last 3 years. That's not an industry that's in decline. PR specialists earn about 40% more than journalists. Now, I don't know whether that is true in Norway, but from various different reports, this is what it's saying. And of course, how many journalists are now in our profession? So for me, it's about evolution. It's not about death. I fundamentally disagree with Robert that PR is dead. I think PR is one of the biggest assets, and communications is one of the biggest assets that any organisation have. But we need to change. And in my view, there are differing communications professionals that I deal with, those that are prepared to change and question the way we've already done things, and those that actually fundamentally aren't. It's always worked for us, we've always done it this way, and I'm going to continue doing that way. Those are the people I think that eventually will die or retire from our profession. And those of us that are left do need to change, but we need to evolve. And so for me, I read a very interesting article from the McKinsey Quarterly called Marketing's New Golden Age. And for me, those lessons, and I've blogged about it on my blog, but those lessons hold very, very true for the PR industry too. And I'm just going to go through them now. So, for me, science is one of the fundamental factors that we need to get hold of. Addressing the issue of data and insights is absolutely crucial. We need to be good at it. When I experience, talk to, and practice public relations, you know, a lot of us aren't actually very good with numbers. We don't like numbers. We don't like spreadsheets. We don't like SQL databases. We're creatives. That's why we went into our profession. But we need to leverage data to improve our practices. And if you don't like it, then get someone on your team that does, so we can actually do this well. The second thing is substance. What Robert argues is that what a company does is much more important than what a company says. And he argues that we as PR professionals have been in the business of actually just sort of being message pieces for what a company says rather than what it does. If we actually raise public relations and communications up the value chains within our organisations, we should have an effect on those organisations. As Solfrid was talking about, actually the culture of those organisations, actually what those organisations do, the substance that we're actually bringing, the purpose of our organisations. And I'll come back to that in a second. Story. I'm so pleased that Solfrid brought up the issue of story. That's always been our heart and soul of our profession, storytelling. And of course, now in the age of content marketing, our advertising colleagues and our marketeers, you know, are getting in on that. Everyone is a storyteller, right? Well, I think each of us individuals are storytellers in ourselves, but we should be recapturing that. We should be telling the stories. I guess the question for us is, what stories should we actually be telling? I think storytelling for a long time has been centered on the products and the services and the individuals in our company, not about the purpose of our company or why we actually exist. That's where we need to change our focus. Simplicity. I think in a world of ever more channels, we need to simplify our practices. it has become, I love the thing about old channels there as well. Actually, our practice has become very, very complex with multiple channels and multiple formats and multiple target audiences to deal with. But fundamentally, we need to simplify both our practices and our business models if we're in the agency world. And for me, if you look at all the new channels that are open to us, pick one, be good at it, then move on. Don't try and pick, 7 channels and, be great at Periscope, for example. Pick that one channel. It could just be email, and be good at it and move on. So let's simplify things, and speed. Speed is absolutely vital to our organisation. We do deal in real time now, of course, and can we be quicker than our competitors? Speed, for me, is the only currency of business today, and it's how we're going to compete with our competitors going forward. That was the McKinsey models. Of course, they like S's, so that's the McKinsey. This is a couple of ones that I've added. Purpose. For me, purpose is very, very important to what we do and what we should be doing as communicators. Last year, Marketing 2020 was the largest marketing survey, and it actually proved, I think it was about 90,000 participants of that survey globally. And it actually proved that companies with a purposeful positioning actually outperformed their competition in terms of shareholder returns. My question is, how many companies actually really know what their purpose is? Go back to that 1960 Theodore Levitt Marketing Myopia article that you probably all studied at school. What does my company actually really do? Get away from that focus on products and services. What is the purpose of your organisation? For me, I'm very much inspired by the likes of Unilever and Paul Polman, their sustainable living programme, where they're looking to double the size of their business, but also decrease their environmental impact, increase sustainability and their positive social impact. If they're able to do it, then every one of us is. But it really needs us as communicators to challenge the leadership groups that we're working with to actually reevaluate the purpose of the company. And quite frankly, a lot of the time, unless we have that position in the company that is respected, then any CEO or leadership will look at it and say, well, yes, that's all very well, but we do this and we sell this. We need to reevaluate our purpose, and we need to bring that so much more into our marketing and communication. What was really interesting for me, one of the most proud things I'm proud about at Mynewsdesk is last year we launched our social innovation program, and we give away about €1 million to over 100 non-profits now from our communications technology. And when I look at our engagement statistics about the content that we put out, whether it be in communications or thought leadership or our social innovation program, actually, by far, the biggest amount of engagement is around our social innovation program and what our employees are doing with our non-profits to talk about. And even me personally with my own non-profit, which I won't talk about today, driving the employee engagement through that work, through that purpose, because we do believe that the world can be changed through communication. So find your purpose, I think, is extremely important. And something that Solfrid actually touched on very well was experience. For me, experiences are absolutely crucial to what we do. You guys today are sitting in a Mynewsdesk experience. Sure, we sell a technology platform, but we believe that it's so important. Technology and digital is not a technology; it's a mindset. And so what experiences you can deliver for your customers, both physical and digital, are absolutely crucial. And for those of you really interested in experience, a great new book by Robert Rose from the Content Marketing Institute called Experiences, the Seventh Era of Marketing has come out, and it's well worth a read on that issue. So experiences, for me, I think will time and time again be extremely important. But when thinking about that, I think it's very interesting because a report came out last year from the Altimeter Group on companies going through a digital transition. And it actually stated that 88% of companies are undergoing some form of digital transformation, but actually only 25% of those companies have actually mapped a clear digital customer journey and identified and understood their digital touch points. I think that's very, very true. Equally shocking, 80% of strategists were talking about, they're investing in digital platforms. So they were all building mobile apps or creating new websites or doing really fun things that we all love to do. Yet actually only 46% of them had actually aimed to overhaul customer services to meet expectations of the digital customer. So whilst maybe the marketing and PR colleagues are off going and creating these digital experiences, the poor customer service teams are still, there and they hadn't been brought together. So for me, that's a huge opportunity when we talk about experience. I'm sure all of you have, who's aware of this diagram? Hands up. Few of you, not everybody. Okay, that's pretty cool. So this was first developed in 2012 by the Altimeter Group in New York, Rebecca Lieb, and it spreads out the three different types of media. Owned media, which is basically your own corporate content. Paid media, which was traditionally the realm of our marketeers and advertising colleagues. And earned media, which has been our profession for as many years as I can remember. And it argues really that these medias and these functions are coming together. And we as communication professionals, I certainly believe, need to be in the center of this converged media environment. And there are many, many areas. I did a workshop last year in Berlin with about 70 European CMOs. And what was really interesting when we looked at the changes and where they were going to apportion their budget, about 90% of all budget was put in paid media. 95% was put in paid media. I was with one woman at a large German company. She had a 30 million euro budget, and she said, 95% of my budget is in paid media. And 3% is in owned media. And 2% is in earned media. And I said, that's interesting. I bet your PR colleagues are really pissed off with you or very jealous. And she sort of smiled and said, yes, maybe. But at the end of that workshop, when we talked about the different changes that were going on in the media, she agreed that actually going forward in the next 2 years, only 70%, they were going to decrease from 95 to 70% was going to be put on paid media. 20% was actually going to be put on owned media, and 10% was going to be put in earned media. So I wrote about this last year saying, actually, that's a win of about 7 million euros for PR and content budgets at that particular company. So please go and study that. So for me, the message really is about concentrating on earned and owned media. And for me, that's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for all of us in the communications profession. Because, the earned media game has been our business for years, and we're good at it in both the traditional and social sphere, the best communicators I know. And owned media, we should all be getting into that too. So this is actually one example, and I met up with the CMO of Scandinavian Airlines last year. And who's seen the Scandinavian Travellers campaign? All of you? Yeah, pretty much all of you. And it's a fundamental change in the way they were doing things. He came in, he was a change maker, he looked at their marketing budgets. Of course, they're an organisation that's under considerable pressure in terms of reshaping their business. And he rationalised lots of operations. If you're that interested, go to my blog, there's an article on it there. But the introduction of this owned and earned media campaign with paid media, he gave me exactly the same message. He was going to reduce SAS's marketing spend to around about 70% paid. He agreed that he was probably 95%, Scandinavian Airlines were 95% up in paid, but he was going to reduce it over the more investment in owned media and more investment in earned media too. I'm not actually going to show you the next video because it was a video of that, but I realised when I was coming over on the plane that it was actually the Swedish voiceover of the Scandinavian Airlines thing, and there's nothing that's sure to piss a Norwegian crowd off than a nice Swedish video. So I'm sure you've all seen this Swedish version, the Norwegian version of it anyway, because it's in your... There we go. Bye-bye, Sweden. But what was really interesting is when I met up with Stefan, he said to me what we had fundamentally, in our attitude to spend more and more on advertising, what we'd fundamentally forgotten was actually where our customers were. So for me, he said, we have 28 million passengers a year. We have 100 million web visitors. We have 3.5 million loyalty subscribers to our company. And our social platforms, have a good following as well. Why aren't we taking advantage of this? Why are we still throwing so much money out there on advertising? And he had mapped, unlike the statistics I showed earlier, he had mapped every single digital touch point of that customer, from waking up in the morning, to coming to the airport, to getting on a plane, to reading the Scandinavian Traveller magazine. It was fascinating. And he said to me, I asked myself, why should I spend so much money externally in the magnitude I do now when I have all these customers so close to me? Should I pay somebody else to expose my messages, or should they pay me to communicate on one of my platforms? And so they've actually now got a revenue model with Scandinavian Traveller where they're actually selling advertising on that. And for me, I said, well, what other Scandinavian travel brand in terms of media has a reach of 3.5 million loyalty subscribers? None. No travel magazine has that in Scandinavia. You are well positioned to become Scandinavia's leading travel media outlet. And they're on the journey with that, with different platforms. And this was another really interesting story that came out of that. So Scandinavian Airlines, company's been going through some tough, or the airline industry, full stop, right? Has been going through some tough times recently. But he said to me, he showed me this guy, and this guy was on about, I think, 14,000 Instagram followers. Just a pilot who loved his job. Going back to your points, Alfred, about actually culture in an organisation, he loved his job, and he was just taking great. If you're a real plane geek, Bjorn Pilot on Instagram, follow him. I just love his photos. They're brilliant. And it shows, obviously, probably they had an organisation where 12,000 employees, I don't know, maybe 11,000 of them are pissed off, and 1,000 are, sorry if you're filming this and you see this, Stefan, but I don't know. You might have some dissatisfied employees, but you've got some employees that are really passionate. So he's now up to 28,000 followers on Instagram. He's one of the best advocates of Scandinavian Airlines. So go look at it. Now let's move on to another airline. It was interesting. We're coming on to crisis communications later in the day, and I was just thinking about, we're going to talk a little bit about Norwegian. We're not going to talk about the strike and last month, but it was interesting that we're going to talk about the importance of the brand newsroom, of course, with Mynewsdesk. But it was interesting that I had a conversation with Joachim, who's the head of communications at Gardermoen at Oslo Airport last month, because I tweeted Norwegian. I was flying the next day when all the flights were cancelled on a Norwegian flight, and I was flying over to London. And I just sort of tweeted Norwegian and said, look, what's the story with the flight? About 15 seconds later, Joachim, who was obviously monitoring the situation for Gardermoen and Oslo Airport, sort of tweeted me very, very quickly back saying, you should have checked Norwegian's own beautiful newsroom, how they're handling the crisis situation. So he can't be with us today, but I told him I'd give him a name check here in the room. But what we did with Norwegian is we actually looked at their traffic and their figures for a month in the final quarter last year, just to show them how they're using the newsroom. They've got newsrooms in about 6 different markets and tell their corporate story through that, as I'm sure many of you do. But let's have a quick look. And Lasse, their head of media relations, said to me, with tight deadlines, being able to respond to a wide range of requests from print, broadcast and online media in a timely and professional manner is his key challenge. Being able to explain to journalists on a tight deadline and sometimes little knowledge of my company, complex issues which are crucial to getting my story right. So very reflective of some of the large companies that we work with. We work with all sizes of companies. For small companies, it's often about getting their message out there because no one knows who they are and what they do. For larger companies like Norwegian, everyone knows who they are, but they want to get their story right. That's what they use their brand newsroom for. And what was interesting when we looked at their traffic over, I think it was the month of September, what was interesting was actually that 70% of their traffic, around 70% of their traffic, was actually coming from the newsroom itself. It wasn't coming from individual stories. It was coming from the content hub that they had created. So different content assets, whether they be pictures or they be videos or they be contact details of certain key individuals there. And actually only 30% was actually coming from the stories or the press releases that they were actually putting in their organisation. And for me, it really showed how important that content hub and that newsroom is. And of course, they have that newsroom on their website, which I hope many of you do too. What was interesting as well was platform consumption. Now, this is an overall summary of their newsroom, but 60% desktop users, 41% mobile users. And what was interesting is how they differentiate the content for both a mobile user and a desktop user. And in some, their US newsroom, they had more mobile users than they had desktop users. So we talked actually about the different types of content that you needed to develop. You know, they had one newsroom that didn't have any mobile Spain. But you know, that was really interesting about having different types of content where your traffic is. If you've got more mobile users, maybe you need shorter, snappier content. Maybe you need more image-led content. That was the number of views that they got. And then in terms of engagement, what was interesting was actually to track the different stories. I'm not going to go into detail here. Had a 27% open rate to emails. I think for the PR industry, it's around about 21%. So they were doing well. In certain markets, they had a much higher opening rate than other markets. Why? Probably because they had a really good BuzzFeed-type headline writer in that market. Can they learn from that person? The social shares were interesting as well. You know, they were really focusing on Facebook, but they found that they had a huge amount of social shares coming from LinkedIn. Who was sharing their stories on LinkedIn? It was actually people that were working at the airports. It was their ground crews. It was their different companies around the world that were sharing their stories. It was all of those airline geeks. So they identified an opportunity there through that data. And looking at the attention time, you know, how they could grow that attention time of their stories in the newsroom was very, very important. It turned out actually that Finland had over 2 minutes of attention time in that newsroom. And I thought, is that the Finnish language, or is it just that Finns are a bit slow reading? Sorry again, this is going to be... Finns are not slow. But it was interesting to actually see the different attention times in different markets for them, using data again to improve our communications. So finally, let me just introduce you to Cheston. So we are a company selling PR and communications tools, right? So we need to live as we learn, and we need to show that we can do PR just like anyone else. And has anyone heard of this campaign in Norway at all? 82. One of you. Where did you hear about it? Don't remember Facebook. That's good. You remember it. That's great. So this is a campaign we actually started, and I'm not worried that you don't, because it was targeted on Sweden. Our home market is Sweden. We hadn't done anything there for a number of years to raise our brand awareness, and we thought we really needed to show our customers how easy it is, actually, to create good content, and how news is spread in a new way today. So in the first quarter of this year, Sophia Yelin, my colleague, ran a project to actually do a PR program to increase our brand awareness in Sweden, and it really surprised us. So let's just have a quick look at Cheston.
To highlight Mynewsdesk, an online newsroom platform, we wanted to show the newsroom from its very best. And we wanted the message to matter, even to the most selective audiences online. So on our client's own platform, we started a conversation on the current issue of the digital divide and created PR history along the way. Kerstin Wolgers is 82 years old, and like 1 million other Swedes, had never been online before. The digital divide in our connected society is a relevant and important issue for Mynewsdesk. Because for online PR to work well, we need as large of an audience as possible. We let the world follow Kerstin's first steps online in real-time broadcasts. With a camera strapped on her chest, she invited us to see the world through her eyes. We made our client's tool the platform for the entire campaign, naming it MynewsdeskNow. The whole world listened and got engaged. How could they not, when getting a chance to discover the internet for a second time? The campaign had an earned reach of close to 200 million people, with an estimated media value of $5 million. Kerstin, 82, became an online celebrity. She started an important conversation on the digital divide. Our client's platform got earned media in Sweden and all over the world. On top of that, they got a case study to show their customers a best practice on how to use real-time communication. That'll come to use, since the campaign increased sales leads with more than 60% within 2 weeks' time. And most importantly, hundreds of millions of people got a reminder that the World Wide Web, despite all its faults, is quite a spectacular place.
So that was Cheston, and let me tell you, we are very proud of that campaign. It was great to get a tweet from Reddit saying, wow, this is part of internet history. But there's a few lessons I just want to share with you before I end from that campaign. You know, what was it about? It was about a destination. It was about owned media. So we created a landing page or website, and we put at the heart of that a real-time newsroom. Of course, a Mynewsdesk newsroom. And we found actually that by far the highest amount of traffic engagement was through that newsroom. I think in the campaign week it was something like, you know, the landing page got about 7,000 hits, and the real-time newsroom got over 20,000 hits because it was real-time storytelling. So those two elements, the website and the newsroom, our own tool, of course. Who else was important? Talking about networks, not hierarchies. We enrolled ambassadors. Of course, they included, these are Swedish PR ambassadors. We included an academic expert, Anders. We included a people like you. Our target group was communications managers and PR professionals. Karin over there is the CMO for Microsoft in Sweden. We included Anita, who's a representative of SeniorNet in Sweden. And they used and leveraged their own networks to tell the story in Sweden and globally. And of course had very different networks. So ambassadors were really important for us. Yeah, the newsroom got a lot of views, you know, and 83% were desktop, 17% were mobile. But we were using data all along the way to see how we actually, it was a 5-day campaign that we actually launched, data and insights every day to see where we actually push it. You know, do we do more on Twitter? Do we do more on Instagram? What do we need to do to the newsroom to actually push that, that boundary? So there you go, you've seen it on the video. 200 million people have earned media reach. Goes directly against Robert Phillips' claim that PR can't do scale. PR ideas can't do scale. I fundamentally disagree with it. And yet we're all very happy that it has 5 million earned media value. But as we all know, who've dealt with advertising equivalencies, okay, great. You can put that on a slide. You can tell that in a PowerPoint presentation to your board. But what are the outcomes? Not what are the outputs. What are the outcomes of that campaign? And for us as a business, sales leads increased by 60%. That's actually a tangible business benefit that we can put to the campaign. However, this was not the aim. This was not the goal. We just wanted to actually raise brand awareness for the company in our home market because we hadn't done so for a while. So the lessons for me, purpose-driven storytelling is absolutely crucial. Believe me, you know, there are other ideas that came along the way, and I'll go into that. But actually finding the purpose, we fundamentally believe that communication can change the world, and we needed to find a topic. There are so many topics around digital communication that are within society that we need to highlight, and we'll continue doing that. Owned and earned content is the key. We worked a lot traditionally as well. We sold into, or our agency sold in we were on national the breakfast program in Sweden, TV4 and Morgon Sofa, twice in that week, and we sold in traditionally leveraging relationships. But we also use new tools too. Agencies, and what I thought was quite interesting was that, of course, there's the guy that headed Edelman in Europe saying that PR is dead. Actually, the agency that we used was Edelman Deportivo. In Stockholm that have become the creative hub for Europe for Edelman. You know, don't tell me that there's no talent in that agency. I think all the individuals that we worked with. And I think it's actually a really important point as well. I write about it on my blog. But agencies, what do they give you? Who's in an agency? Hands up today. Great, a few of you. So there's lots talked about agencies. The business model's dead. You're not going to exist in a few years. You know, all of us super in-house people are going to, you know, not need agencies. Bullshit, actually. The reason why often the in-house focus that we lack creativity because we're so focused on our own task and our internal struggles that we lack creativity. Agencies can really give that. Edelman Deportivo certainly did that for us. And the other thing is resources. Sometimes we just need extra resources. I think agencies may have to change their business models of how they've operated, but they will survive and thrive, the good and creative ones. However, they need to be managed, and they need to be managed by people like us. The first idea they came to us with was, should we do this with a reality TV star, about a 17-year-old or 20-year-old person? This is going to be super. If we'd done that, the campaign wouldn't have been half as successful. So I paid credit to Sophia in the way she very very well managed the agency relationship. And in the end, like all good relationships, if there's a little bit of conflict and resistance in there, then you come up with the best ideas. Real-time content doesn't need to be difficult. We all think that content's so difficult. We hear it all the time. We strapped a camera to Kerstin's chest, and we broadcast that on the website. It's actually not that difficult. And we opened up an Instagram account and a Twitter account, and we used the newsroom to generate that content. So that wasn't too difficult, but it does need a bit of creative thinking and planning. Dare to try new things. This was what was really interesting. None of that, or very little of that, coverage had actually come before Friday of the campaign. We started on Monday, and we had a great coverage in our home market, Sweden, which was our focus. However, we tried Reddit. We wanted to try Reddit, and there was lots of things that could have gone so-called viral during the week. She did the gaming on Battlefield. She took to Tinder to find out how that was, but none of that actually played out. And then we went on Reddit. And I remember saying to Sophia, I wonder how this is going to go. We haven't used Reddit that much before. And we were all sitting there. And so we posted the Ask Me Anything, the AMA. And she was sitting there together with the agency. And within 2 hours, I think we had about 1,140 comments, and it got up to number 1 on Reddit. And then within a few hours from that, the likes of the Washington Post were picking up, CBS, Nationals in the UK. We've even been on front pages in China as well. I'm still trying to work out what the hell they actually said. And actually, what was interesting was you really saw the difference between what I call cut and paste media, or what the Edelman Trust Barometer might talk about hybrid media, media that don't really add any value, to actually really good media, like the Washington Post, that really added strong editorial journalistic content to that. And they actually taught us a lot, that, for example, 42% of American seniors don't have access online either, and they really carried the campaign. So try new things. And the final learning was a campaign is not enough. For me, a campaign isn't. This is just a starting point. So it provides us with an asset to go forward. But actually, that campaign thinking, I hate it, to be quite frank. Our business models and our practices are based on it. But what is this campaign, and how can we take it forward? That was the final learning for me. But we will be taking our purpose-driven storytelling in digital communication forward as a business. So I'm going to leave you with 3 quotes. I've got 1 minute left, right? 3 quotes which I think are absolutely important to the successful, thriving and surviving of our industry. One is from my favorite strategic master, this guy. Success is the ability to go from one failure to the other without the loss of enthusiasm. Dare to try new things. Dare to fail. Create that culture, or try and create that culture within your organization and your teams where you can do just that. I know it's difficult in some organizational contexts, very easy to say, but try do it. The second quote, and this comes from actually that book, Experiences, the Seventh Era of Marketing, a guy called Eduardo Conrado, who's the innovation guy at Motorola. And he says this about marketing, but I say this about PR. Right now, PR as a function is at an inflection point between what we're comfortable with, what we have permission to do, and what's possible. And my final message for you, coming from the same guy, is we can't stay married to yesterday, but we can't be afraid of tomorrow. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic day, and enjoy your waffles.